welcome to the video. This is video number 26, and my name's Dave Hill, and you guys are having a good time watching these videos, I'm sure, and been learning a lot. So study hard, keep working on this stuff, and the rewards will come in many years, in many ways, in your songwriting, in your guitar playing, and lots of other ways. So let's review a little bit about what we did last lesson and kind of go over and then expand on that in this next lesson. We're going to have some fun today playing some blues. But we remember from last lesson, in lesson 25, we talked about major six chords. We talked about chords like this. They were really good for big band jazz and sort of pop stuff. We learned that shape. We learned this shape. We learned this form right here. We learned how they slide really well. Right? We learned how they are good for endings. Right? Endings of song. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take these forms and we're going to combine them with some other chords that we've talked about a little bit, or we haven't talked about yet, but we're going to talk about today. And these are dominant ninth chords. And let's take a look at what a dominant ninth is. You'll notice that it's got another number after, just like our six chords did last lesson. So let's examine what that is. A dominant ninth is a root, a third, and a fifth, just like any major triad, but then what we have here is what makes it sound like a dominant seventh chord. It's got the flat seven, or also called a minor seventh. So, and when you listen to it, you'll hear right away it sounds like a dominant chord. Right? So we have root, third, fifth, flat seven. But it doesn't end there, right? That's just the dominant seventh chord. What makes it a dominant ninth is the upper extension of the ninth right there. There's the ninth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? So now when you include that note, you have what's called is a dominant ninth. And if you would see it spelled out in a stack, it'd be like this. Okay, that's in this case it's a C9. Okay? Now the notes don't have to be arranged that way, okay? They don't have to be 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9. In fact, in most cases, you can't play a voicing like that on the guitar because it requires too many fingers and too much of a stretch. You couldn't play it that way. So what you do is you learn voicings. You learn inversions and voicings of chords that make for better fingerings. Okay? So that's what we have over here. Let me show you a dominant ninth that's more playable on the guitar. And this is a fifth string root dominant ninth. Okay? So in this case, it's C dominant ninth, but notice now the voicing. It's 1, 3, flat 7. We skip over the fifth and we go right to the flat 7. 1, 3, flat 7, 9. And then we have the fifth on the top. So that's a more typical, very easily played dominant ninth chord. And that's really a very conventional way to play because you get the color of the ninth here on the top, you get the flat 7 in the middle here, and the third kind of in the lower bottom, and the fifth on the top. So you hear that a lot in the blues chords and vamp situations, in funk and rock and roll, all kinds of stuff. It's a very typical chord and a typical voicing. Okay? Now we also have another chord over here, and this is, remember the X indicates where you could play the root if you were going to finger it. So this would be a root as if you were playing on the sixth string, very close to the shape that we played in the last lesson with the major six. Okay, but this is a dominant ninth. So look what happens here. We have the flat, the third. We have the flat 7. We have the ninth right here, and we have the fifth again on top. So 3, flat 7, 9, fifth, which is exactly the same thing that this voicing is. Well, there's the 3, flat 7, ninth, and my fifth was on top here. But in this case, on this chord, we don't use the root. I mean, I could play it with my thumb again, but it's kind of hard to do that, and it's not necessary. So you play it like this, and you get a great ninth chord. You could also play G ninth here, but this is what we're playing here. Okay? So this is going to be very useful because we're going to combine this shape in particular with the six chords that we learned on the last lesson. Okay? So what I mean is this is the chord we learned last lesson, or one of the chords, a major 6. Right? Good chord, sounds nice, but it's not very bluesy because it doesn't have the flat 7 in it. The flat 7 is the note that sounds like the blues scale sound or the blues sound. Okay, so how do we get this and this together? Well, this is a very cool thing to do. You take this chord, slide into it, and then you can take this chord before it and slide back and forth between this one and this chord. The 9th chord that we just learned in this chord. Like that. You see how cool that was? You got the 6th chord. And you slide down into the 9th chord. So you played the 6th chord, and then you slide down basically you're like a half step above the 9th chord, and then go into the right root location. So it's like you've gone A flat 9th, G 9th. So you've got right, and there's so many possibilities with that kind of thing. There's a lot of different ways you can go with that. Now I'm sliding into the 6th chord. I play the 9th first. I'm sorry. Right? Or I just like the one that we did. And once again, like we learned in our last lesson, what we're doing is we're creating melody inside of our chord voicings. We're creating a melody inside of these little chords, right? We're not just staying on one shape. We're creating melody inside of the chords by moving through different voicings. So if we were to play this in a blues situation, it really comes in handy because now we can incorporate this whole move on a blues. Okay, and that creates us, or gives us a lot more melodic interest when we're playing chords. We don't just have to go. There's nothing wrong with that. That just sometimes is a little bit boring. Okay, so listen to it over this blues progression, and we're going to show you guys in a minute. Oh, wait, hang on a second. I got to set up my loop station. Just 1 second. Okay, so now let's check it out over our blues progression. I've got a very specific place where I want you to play the 6th chord and the 9th chord. Okay? And because they create melody when they're utilized or put together, you have to be thoughtful about how you connect them so you create a consistent kind of a flow to the melody. Okay, so what I've got right here is I start off with this 6th chord, this chord right here. And then I play the 9th chord after it. So it's going to be like this. 1. The second half of it is G6, G6, 9. So it's going to be on the second bar. So the first thing is it's going to be, and the second half, okay? So I'm just going back and forth very strictly between these two chords. There's a lot of sliding things that I showed you in the first example, but let's just stick with this basic example first, okay?